It is another episode of the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Wes Cheng alongside Brad Bierman. Thanks as always for joining us on this Monday, September 9, 2024. We begin today, of course, with Syracuse football. They knocked off number 23 Georgia Tech on Saturday. So many storylines from this game to pick from. Brad, you were there. You were in press row. What was your number one takeaway from the game?
Well, Wes, you talk to the kids all the time. What do they say? What an atmosphere. What a great place to play football in the Dome. You can't help but be impressed. And it was certainly that way. I don't care if you have 25,000 in there, 35,000 in there, 40,000 in there. Those that attend are diehard fans. They back the orange and they make that building loud, Wes. And that's why it's called the Loud House. And that's why it's such a great home field advantage. And Fran Brown knows it, and he preaches it all the time to recruits and to the players on the team. And we've got to protect our home turf. And Syracuse certainly went out and did that. And you have to be impressed. I sat there watching through the binocs, West, from the press box. I haven't seen a Syracuse offense this proficient in years. And then what great coaching on the defensive side to make the adjustments that they had to make in the rushing game after the week one performance against Ohio. And you know what? People bitch and complain about the special teams with good reason. There were some bad mistakes in the game, but knowing this coaching staff, Wes, they're going to make those corrections over the next 2 weeks before Stanford comes in the Dome in September 20th.
Yeah, Brad. So I'm going to start in a couple obvious places. Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord, he's been phenomenal in his first two games in Central New York. 381 yards, 4 touchdowns. He now leads the entire country in touchdown passes with 8 through 2 games. And of course, the excellence of Arande Gatson and Trevor Pena, that continued. What an offensive outburst to have 520 total yards on offense, dominate possession time, 36 minutes of having the ball compared to 23 for the Yellow Jackets. I thought that was a key factor in the game, especially as they ran out the clock when Georgia Tech had pulled within 3. And while the players definitely get the credit, they all obviously should get the credit. I also want to give credit to the coaching staff. Will Nixon, I thought, called an outstanding game. I loved how multiple the offense was. He gave you so many different looks. Our Jim Schulte pointed this out in his column earlier today, but just great misdirection in the game's first drive to call play action. LaQuint Allen, obviously you were there, Brad, slide Will Nixon Jr. to a flat for the 20-yard gain. That's when you knew, wow, this is a very well-run, disciplined offense. That was a microcosm of the different schemes that the offense employed all day. So give a lot of credit to the game planning to confuse Georgia Tech all afternoon. And Brad, I know that those weren't your only takeaways from the game. What else did you have for us?
Well, I just want to add this real quick on the offense, Wes, if I could. You give Kyle McCord 3 seconds to pass the football, he's going to find an open receiver. That's the way these routes are designed now, both close to the line of scrimmage and then downfield. I'm really convinced that this is going to be an offense that opposing teams' defensive coordinators are going to have sleepless nights the weeks preparing for Syracuse. There's so many weapons. And then, of course, let me flip over to the defensive side. And Fran Brown said it best after the game, Wes, that he told his defensive coaches to go in a room after the Ohio game and don't come out till you've come up with new schemes. Kind of kidding, but kind of serious, that they spent about 2.5 days of the prep week before Georgia Tech came into the Dome, coming up with a new defense and highlighting of moving Fadil Diggs down to the linebacker spot. And we talk about Kyle McCord, and let's talk about Diggs here on the defensive side. And look at it this way, Wes. Has any coach in the country in his first year been able to get a player making such significant contributions on each side as Fran Brown did with McCord and Diggs? Diggs is just a spectacular player. He has such great athleticism to be able to attack both, at the linebacker spot and at the line of scrimmage. Also want to give a shout out to Barry Buxton in the defensive secondary Saturday. I thought his play was really important. Great tackler and a key contributor there with some of the more well-known defensive backs. And about special teams, it will get cleaned up. And again, Brady Denneberg did hit a field goal. That turned out to be the margin of difference in the game. And Stonehouse in his one punt pinned Georgia Tech deep. So very happy with how Syracuse has improved in week 2. Now it'll be interesting to see with a couple of weeks off before the next game, come back ready in front of a big Dome crowd again against Stanford.
So we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll get into a beef between Fran Brown and Brent Key. This is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. This is the Bet Online read. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng alongside Brad Bierman. Brad, we've got a little beef to talk about, and this is basically a sports reporter's dream, in my opinion. Last week, Georgia Tech head coach Brent Key had this to say in his press conference, quote, "This is a game, and I just told the team, this has nothing to do with plays, calls, runs, passes, coverages, fronts. Ain't none of that," said Key. "The game is about our ability to be the most physically tough football team we can be, possibly be from 12 to about 4 o'clock on Saturday." So after the win, Fran Brown takes a little page out of Michael Jordan's playbook. He took it personally. Here's a quote from him after the Orange win. So he says, quote, "I took it personal when he talked about it not being X's and O's. It was coming up here and being tough and physical for 4 hours. We're from the Northeast. What do you mean by that? Like, we don't play football. We're not physical and tough." Whew, smoke. Brad, you were sitting in the room as that happened. What did you think?
Well, I thought the picture was really kind of unique. There's Fran Brown holding his daughter up in front of the media there, which I thought is just great. Great family atmosphere, by the way. And the way that's coming out, holding his daughter there, was kind of a contraction. I thought, contradiction, excuse me, in that he was really being upset about something, and his daughter's there, and she's trying to hey, Dad, be calm. So I kind of like that picture there, but. Look, he's a rookie head coach acting like a veteran head coach here, taking these words from the opponent. The bulletin board material was a psychology major at Western Carolina because he's taking this and he knows perfectly how to script it back to his players. As we heard from Fadil Diggs afterwards, that was a clip that was played over and over in practice all week. So obviously he got it into his players' heads, but at the same time, these guys want to win for themselves. They can be motivated. That's what coaches want to do. That's what coaches are going to do, Wes. But, these players are really motivated. They've had a chip on their shoulder since the summer. Remember back at the ACC Media Day, they felt disrespected. So you want to talk about disrespect on the coaching staff, Fran Brown taking it down to the players. I think that's been bubbling from the players upward since summer workouts.
Yeah, so Brad, a couple my takeaways here. You mentioned Diggs being asked after the game about this. And again, Fran Brown had taken that clip and just played it over and over and over, just pounding it into his team's head throughout the week. So he took it personally. He made sure that his team did as well. But I got to be honest with you, Brad, I listened to that Key conference even before the game, before this even came up. I don't think Key meant that as a swipe at Syracuse, but personally, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because Fran Brown knows how to push the buttons of his team. And this is the way he was going to do it. I mentioned taking a play out of Michael Jordan's playbook. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, they are all famous for inventing rivalries that don't exist as motivations to drive them to be great. And I think that's what Fran Brown did here at all. And I don't mind that. The proof is in the pudding. Syracuse won, and they played a significantly more physical game than they did in the opener against Ohio. The run defense was outstanding. And I thought it really showed on the field that what they had worked on all week. And to your point, that's why I think special teams is going to be better heading into that Stanford game, because they're going to have this week and the bye week to really work on special teams. I expect a much better special teams product on the field, as the defense was a lot better from the Ohio game to the Georgia Tech game. And Brad, want to talk about the implications of the win, because the AP poll came out on Sunday. Syracuse is just 4 spots outside of the top 25 heading into that bye week. They have the matchup against Stanford the following week. If they beat Stanford, depending on what happens with the other top 25 ranked teams, they could get into the rankings. How important is that for Syracuse?
It's always important, Wes. You always want to see your name there in the top 25 list of schools. Recruits want to see it. And it's really important in Fran Brown's first year to really make a statement early winning takes care of everything. We've said it for years. This is going to lead to more money for NIL, more money to back the players in the program. And of course, winning is going to keep you in the rankings and put you in a spot now with the expanded college football playoff. Fran Brown has this program exactly where he wants to have it. He's winning his first 2 games. He's playing all he has to do with his players, from quotes that I agree with you really wasn't meant to be for Syracuse, but did a masterful job of turning that around and using it for his team to get a victory. And he has everything right where he wants going into this first of 2 open weeks. And yeah, Syracuse in the polls win. They'll be there, Wes. No doubt about that.
So yeah, Brett, I think absolutely the top 25 ranking is important. As you mentioned, Syracuse is trying to establish credibility under a first-year head coach that's never even been a coordinator, and having that number against its name is something you can knock on the door of every potential recruit and say that you are the best of the best, and if you want to play for us, you're going to be the best as well. And I spoke with several recruits who attended the game on Saturday after their trip, and I think Syracuse beating a nationally ranked team really meant something special for them to be at. So to me, yes, I absolutely think that Syracuse should be gunning for it. They haven't been ranked since 2022. And in the entire 8-year run of Dino Babers, he was only ranked in 3 of those seasons. And going back to Scott Schaefer and going back to Doug Marrone, they weren't ranked at all. Of course, the Greg Robinson era, they weren't ranked. So it's absolutely important, I think, that they have the number against their name. When you have a new coach, you get that credibility quickly. This is definitely one of those ways.
Agree, Wes, because Syracuse is a P4 conference pouring all this money into the program. It's time to win. It's time to get ranked. And not just in football, in basketball this season as well.
That's it for us. For Brad Bierman, this is Wes Cheng. You've been listening to the Juice on the Cuse podcast on the Rivals and Believe networks, and we will see you next time.